Hi, Anna Grace. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Whitney, Chef Whitney. It's so good to be back. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to see your
Oh,
face.
my pleasure. And like I was telling you before, there hasn't been anyone on the High Vibration Living podcast to chat about Akashic Records. So that's what we're going to focus this conversation on because that's your expertise. And we're just going to dive deep and help the listener understand what it is, the purpose, the intention, how to use it, and then help us decide if we need a reading.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
I know. It's so funny because I feel like there are a lot of people maybe spiritual or into all of the things that you talk about, but Akashic Records is one that is a little bit deeper down the old rabbit hole. And a lot of people have heard about it, but it's kind of this like mysterious, vague thing. So I'm hopeful I can bring a little light to it today.
Okay. So what is it?
Okay, so what are the Akashic Records? She's going in for the kill shot. Okay, so first I'm going to kind of give everybody a metaphor or an analogy because I feel like that helps. If I go too complex, I'm afraid I might lose people. So
Okay.
everybody buckle up, stay with me. So I've been an Akashic Records practitioner for practicing Akashic Records practitioner. Now it's really a mouthful. For about, let's see, since 2020. I'm like, how many years is that for? And since then, I have channeled a lot of different ways that we can describe the Akashic Records and use the Akashic Records. And this was a really good. I love a technology analogy because I feel like
Yeah.
everybody has technology, everyone can understand it, everyone can relate. So I got this one day in meditation and I was like, that is brilliant. It makes perfect sense. So I want you to think of yourself as this little iPhone, this little piece of technology, because essentially our brains and our subconscious mind, there is a lot of algorithms and, comparisons to, in some ways, we are these technologically advanced beings, electromagnetic
Mhm.
beings, if you will. And so I want you to think of yourself as this beautiful iPhone. And on your iPhone, you have all of your notes and your memories and your contacts and your concert videos and everything, that you capture on a daily basis on this phone. And not to mention on this phone, you have all of the previous iPhone lives of the previous phones. When you update them, the
Yes.
previous iPhone life goes into this iPhone, right? So your
Yes.
iPhone now is really carrying around multiple life of other iPhones information. And we have all this information, but see, we can't access all of the information on the iPhone all the time because it would overwhelm our iPhone, right?
Mhm.
So what do? We've got to upload it to our cloud. And our cloud is one of those things that nobody really knows what the cloud is. It's like so vague. We're like, what is the cloud? Is it a place? Is it a thing? I don't know. Our cloud is an exact kind of mirror representation of what the Akashic records are. Your Akashic record, every single person listening has an Akashic record. It is like your soul's library. It is your past, your present, your future. It is your past lives, your past iPhones, everything. Every thought, every emotion. And a lot of people may refer to this as God's plan. It's all kind of wrapped up into this beautiful little bow in your Akashic record. And there is a library of Akashic records. So no, the Akashic records is not a physical place. It's not a book that falls out of the sky. People ask me that all the time. It's not a dumb question. It is a state. It's really a place of consciousness. You can access it through meditation or psychically, through your third eye, through honestly tons of ways. Journaling, there's a lot of ways to access it, and everybody can access it. So I am not special or unique. Everyone on the planet has a record and has the ability to access it. And it is your little digital cloud. It is the place where all of your thoughts and your memories and your emotions and everything is stored in this life and other lifetimes as well. But it all makes up this really beautiful digital blueprint of our life that we're here to learn and to grow and to evolve and live out.
Yeah.
So how did I do for off the out of the gate? Ask me some more questions and I can keep
Well,
going.
my favorite is the analogy to the cloud because we all have times where we've tried to access something that's on the cloud, like an old video or an old photo. And when we try to pull it up or try to pull it into like an Instagram story or a reel, it won't come in, it won't download.
Mhm.
So that's like times when you're trying to access an old memory or a past life because you want to clear something in your body that's
Mhm.
tied to it, but it's not ready to come out yet. It's
Yeah.
not ready to be seen.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting. And then, when the timing's right, that's when you're able to experience that past life or let go of that memory or make that transition with a friend or a family member in this life because it's time for it to come to pass. So that's really fascinating.
Yes, beautiful. Yes, exactly. Sometimes we can't force a memory. Sometimes that cloud is stubborn. You have all these old memories that you want to access and they're just loading, 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 and they're not ready to drop in. And, our Akashic record, the library, it's all of this information. And I feel like the cloud is such a good representation. That was what I was meditating. I was like, it's our cloud. Like that makes so much sense, in a way, because our bodies would be overwhelmed if we remembered and felt every single subconscious memory, past life, trauma experience. We would be miserable. So we have a place that we can still access the information and receive it, retrieve it when we need it and when it's what we need. And this is the cool thing about the Akashic Records is the Akashic Records never makes a mistake. And it is a place of ultimate love. Light, truly, the word light and love and light is information, bringing people into the light. That's knowledge. And, the Akashic Records is literally just information. It is pure light. It is pure loving consciousness. And I'm someone that I am both psychic, clairvoyant, medium, you name the modality, I've played in it. And I've always loved the Akashic Records because I think the name sounds a little, my best friend always says, it sounds like Jumanji or something. Like it sounds like a scary word, like, ooh, what's in there? And I always tell people, I'm like, it is the most light-filled modality I've ever played in because it's just pure loving information. And for me, I really feel like it's just an extension of source. It's an extension of God. It is truly just information. And the more that you can kind of start to play in this realm, then you start to download, a little bit more from your cloud, from your Akashic Records. And the Akashic Records always gives you what you need, but it might not be exactly what you want. You might go in wanting a certain memory, but you're going to get something from there every single time, whether it's just a gentle guidance. It's very gentle and very loving. But I really feel like the Akashic Records never makes a mistake. And you're always going to receive the information that you need whenever you go in. And I always tell people that there are keepers of the Akashic Records. So think of it just like any other library. There are librarians. There are people that, you got to swipe your little card. And our library card for the Akashic Records is, for me personally, I'm sure there's lots of other people out there that have accessed it differently, but I have an opening prayer that I say, it's quite long, that I've channeled for myself and for everyone that I teach. And it's a prayer really just connecting with like love and delight. The word delight is in my prayer's title, which is just kind of fun. And so we say our opening prayer and we're just setting really strong container and intentions that's what we're connecting with. And then you can go in and ask any types of questions in the Akashic Records, just as you would connecting with any type of spiritual modality, just asking a question out loud. I journal, but I always tell people before they do a reading with me to ask questions that are like, what, how, why. I tend to stay away from when, because in the Akashic Records, timelines are very loose and time is elusive, and you know how time is in the spirit world. That's not really the focus, but the focus of what I work with people is like, what am I supposed to learn from this person coming into my life? Or why is this coming up? Like, what is the lesson there? Or, what is my soul's purpose? Like these kind of bigger questions versus, who am I supposed to, or when am I going to meet my soulmate? Like those questions are a bit more like, in the grand scheme of thing, your Akashic record is like truly your blueprint of your soul's purpose and your life's work and mission and God's plan for you. That was, you came into this planet and you had already decided on this mission that you're going to carry out. And the Akashic Records is just here to kind of nudge you along and remind you of why you're here and that you do have a purpose and that you are here for a reason.
Well, you and I, believe in this place, and we believe in the power of readings and connecting with all the different realms that exist. But there are a lot of people that still don't, and they might be listening to this podcast and still extremely skeptical, and they want to just experience life and be in the present. How do you suggest people use something like the Akashic record?
If they are like new, or if they're more skeptic, or just anyone?
Just anyone who maybe just doesn't have questions, but, is curious about it, wants a session. Do you have to come with questions, or is it just something that you can just show up for and information is just given to you that's going to be supportive with where you are and where you at right now?
Yes to both. So you can absolutely show up and just say whatever I need. And sometimes that's fun to just be like, I go in the Akashic Records sometimes daily, sometimes it just depends on what's going on in my life, but I just like to open it. And the guidance that I receive, it's always so loving. It's always so wise and simple and profound. It's not anything, sometimes it's not super chatty or wordy or whatever, but when I'm doing a session with someone, the reason I say to come prepared with questions is because think about walking into a library and being like, I don't know what book I'm looking for, right? There's so much information. There's so many places that you can go and look, that I like knowing I can deliver what someone's looking for from me as a reader. Now, if someone wants to just access the Akashic Records and just go in and say, what do I need to hear today? Perfect. Beautiful. I don't really have any questions, but what do I need in this moment? And you will receive whatever it is that you need in that moment, so it's really beautiful because I think it can be so many things. And I personally work in soul's purpose because that really lights me up and it makes me feel like I'm really helping someone who may feel lost or stuck or scared, or they don't have a purpose, or they don't know why they're here. They're questioning everything. And that is a place that I really like to provide, guidance or shine some of this light, this information. However, I have worked with so many people that have taken, I have a How to Read the Akashic Records course, who've taken the course and they use it. I have herbologists who want to learn more about different types of herbs and remedies. And there's all kinds of affirmations and prayers and healing modalities. And for you, recipes and different foods. Like that was how I started learning about grounding my energy. It was like, oh, sweet potatoes, eat from the ground. And we've talked about that on your my podcast as well.
Yeah.
And I got all that from the Akashic Records because it really is just this infinite loving database, of information. And so there is something for everyone. Even like you don't have to be someone, like maybe someone listening is curious and they're like, oh, but I don't want to ever do readings. Great. You don't have to. You don't even have to tell anyone that you dabbled in this. You might just, people come to me and be like, this just, it doesn't make sense to me. And I don't really know what you're talking about, but something about what you're saying is resonating with me. And then I'm like, that's great. If you even clicked on this podcast because it is niche content, then you're here for a reason. You were guided here. Like I always tell people, if they find me, you found me for a reason. Cause they're always like, do you think I could do this? And I'm like, yes. So I always tell people like, of course I have a course, but there's books you can read. There's tons of different ways that you can access the Akashic Records. I always tell people to just go in, find a nice quiet space, light a candle. That's what I do. I set up my little cozy area and I say my opening prayer and I would just sit for a while. Like I would just sit in there when I first started and I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't ask questions. I would just sit and listen to what was like happening inside of me, or like I started feeling rushes of energy and just feeling really like light. And I always feel so euphoric when I come out of doing these readings because it is such a high vibrational frequency. It's angel energy. I mean, they're literally angel readings, essentially. People, you can call it all kinds of things, but at its core, that's what it is. And so, coming out of it, you feel so giddy and happy. But in the beginning, just sitting and listening and connecting with the energy is all you have to do. And then some days you might get a word, and then you get a sentence, and then it just grows. And then I would start journaling pages and pages and pages. And the next thing you know, I was doing readings. So everyone's evolution is going to look different because that's how it is with everyone's spiritual journey, but anybody can do it. And anybody that's listening absolutely is here for a reason. That's always what I say. It's niche content.
Well, it's important for people to understand too, it's not a fortune teller. And I think that's what people are really learning about all different maybe spiritual and healing modalities is they aren't here to tell your fortune. You're here to make your fortune. You're here to make your experience. But there's always these tools out there to support us along the way, to give us like really gentle nudges, to remind us that, we're here for a reason, that we're special, that we have really unique gifts. We have a really unique experience that we're meant to have, and to support us when we're feeling scared or timid or confused.
Yes, absolutely. This is such a good example because a lot of times when people do a reading with me, I'll always tell them like, I'm not going to tell you something that's going to shock you to your core. I'm not going to blow your mind right now. But I do have people that will, I'll tell them something like, oh, this is part of, I always say I'll see different little like soul fragment purpose. Like, I'm not going to go in and tell you this is your purpose in one sentence. Our purpose is so many things. It's evolving, it's changing, it's growing. And I can't just sum it up in a sentence, but I'll say, I can see you doing something in this area. And then they'll be like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. When I was a kid, I always dreamt of doing that. I've never told anyone. And I've almost forgotten about it until we had this conversation. So I know it's very sweet. And it really is. It's like, it's a lot of bringing people back to those dreams they had as a kid that they've sort of just pushed down because, oh, that'll never happen or that'll never be me. And I'm like, no, it is. It can be you. It absolutely can be your story. And I'm seeing this right now and I had no idea. I think it brings so much validation back to them. They're like, no, I was onto something. I can trust myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that really then helps people to start to naturally be able to touch into their intuition because they can then start to visualize themselves at that age.
Yes.
And when they can start to feel and see themselves at different ages in their life, they can kind of tap into those old memories, those old sensations, those old dreams, and it can reignite and guide them to their next steps in life.
Absolutely. That is like the biggest. I love that you said that, reignite, because the thing that I always tell people who have taken, how to read the Akashic Records with me or have done any of the work with me, I always tell them just setting the intention to connect with the Akashic Records or saying the opening prayer or even having an Akashic Records reading, it is such an activation for you. It is like you and I come together and I'm just holding your hand. Like, you have all the answers. You are the intuitive creature. But when we're creating this kind of intention together in this container, it's kind of like reignites the intuition. So even if, you go into the Akashic Records and maybe you don't get all the answers that you need and everything that you seek, but there is a really powerful energetic activation that happens. And it's gentle, it's not scary, but it's just like every single day things start getting a little clearer. Mm-hmm. And that's the coolest part about the work is that it does. You're exactly right. It reignites this intuition, this intuitive voice, because you're really setting a strong intention saying like, I really want to connect with my soul's purpose, my soul's essence, and I'm ready to listen. And you don't have to get all the answers and you probably will never get all the answers. No one's out here trying, like you said, it's not, being a fortune teller, but it's deeply connecting back with self, your true self, your child self, your soul's essence.
That is so, it's just so exciting and fun that there are these places that we can turn to when we're kind of in a funk or a crossroads and we can essentially get ourselves out of it. Like, there is a map for us. You can still have those low moments. They're great learning opportunities, but there's opportunity to transition. Before you got into Akashic record reading, like what was the skill that first turned on for you?
Well, let's see. I would say probably my mediumship skills first, because for anyone that doesn't know my story, I had a very kind of crazy awakening, out of body, near-death experience in my 20s. And I just realized, I was like, I'm turning 31 next week. So now I can say in my 20s. And so it was quick. It was kind of sudden. But after I had that experience, I started dreaming. It started in my dreams. I started dreaming things and then they would happen. And I was like, wow, this is really weird. Like, I started feeling really intuitive because most of my life I had been taking Adderall and stimulants because I thought I was ADD, ADHD. But now looking back, I'm like, I was just really intuitive. I think I was just a very different learner. And I had gotten diagnosed as a child as, oh, she must be ADD, ADHD. And I'm like, no, I think I was just like highly sensitive, highly intuitive little kid looking back. So once I got off all the medication and really started like kind of getting clear on like, oh, connecting back to myself, I started dreaming and seeing kind of people that had passed. My grandmother would come to me in my dreams. And I remember telling some people, wow, this is really weird. I started kind of feeling like, am I crazy or is this actually like happening? And I had a good friend of mine. She connected me because at the time I was a wardrobe stylist in Nashville and I was working on like celebrity shoots and sets and all kinds of fun, crazy stuff. But a lot of these celebrities were going to see this psychic in town. And I was like, well, I want to go see him. I'm intrigued. And keep in mind, like prior to my own out-of-body experience, I was very not against psychics, but I grew up in the Catholic Church. Like, we were not supposed to go see them, blah, 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 blah. So I was kind of a skeptic, we'll say. And I remembered he pretty much told me, he's like, oh yeah, you're not crazy, but you are a medium and you are here to do readings like I do. And I remember being like, what? This is crazy. No way.
Yeah.
But I was kind of thinking, oh, there's no way I can never do that. And I remembered starting very slowly, like getting like some angel cards and just kind of dabbling. I was like, I'm going to play with some angel cards and do little angel card readings. I'm going to do like a little channel journaling. I'm just going to like see what happens, dabble in a little tarot, do a little bit of this. And I do then, after I kind of actively was working and opening up, then I would start to my mediumship skills open, and I would have spirits come visit me. And whenever I say that, I think people will get scared, but I never had a scary experience. It was always very beautiful, like my grandmother or a loved one or someone coming to me to help guide me. But it was like the most interesting feeling because I could just feel it like all throughout my body. Could feel, could sense. And in the beginning could see a lot more in the 3D, but I have since worked to not that to me was a little bit too much for me. Like I want to have a human experience and I want to have boundaries. So now I have like a really set routine that I do and I know how to drop in and connect. But in the beginning, I was never scared. I was just so curious. I was so fascinated. Like, wow. Like observing it happen, being like, this is just so interesting that I've lived, my whole life not knowing that I had this ability or not even really believing in this stuff. But then, once you have your own experience and you're like, oh, wow, I was always a see to believe kind of gal. And I did. I sure did. And so anyways, I started dabbling in the mediumship, but I was never really interested in doing those types of readings for people because I felt safe with the spirits that I worked with and my angels, but I was never really trying to just invite in like random energy. And so I had a friend that was like, you should get your Akashic Records read. And I was like, what? Akashic who? And she's like, yeah, you should get your Akashic Records read. It's really cool. I was like, okay. So she connected with me, my dear friend, Yvonne, who I've been friends with for years now. And she did a reading for me. And like 20 minutes in, I was like, can I do this? Can I open the Akashic Records? And she was like, of course. And she was like, I'll give you, a book recommendation. You can read a book and try it out. And I was like, it was just like this coming home. Like, it was just like, this is my thing. Like, this is what I've been looking for. Oh my gosh. It just like, I don't know. It just spoke to me. I mean, probably how you feel about creating a beautiful meal or, when you just know you're like, oh, it just feels so right. And it happened very quickly from there. I just was obsessed. I learned everything. I took every online course and enrolled in online schooling. And I just love to learn about it. I also love to learn. And very quickly, like I started doing readings on myself and I did a reading on one friend who's a really good friend of mine, who's the CEO of a smoothie company, and she was so blown away. She cried. I cried. We both were so shocked. I was just as shocked as she was. I was like, oh my gosh. And from there, it was like word of mouth. It just spread like wildfire. And I was just everyone wanted a reading. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And it really just kind of exploded. And then I launched my podcast and it did so well that I was like, no, I need more. Like, I want people to learn how to do this, like to access it every day. Because just as what you said, like there have been moments where I've been sick or stuck or something is going on in my life. And I always know I have that place to go to just give me some really good, straightforward guidance. It's just like, hey, slap out of it. It's okay. You're human. Like, it's not going to be great all the time, but like, this is what you're here to learn it, be in it, enjoy it. You're going to come out on the other side. It's okay. And you're just like, yeah, I'm okay.
So I do that with my guides. So I'll sit down occasionally in the evening before bed and connect with them. And I find that no matter like how great the session is, like, and it can be one of those, I can be so down, I can connect with them, I can feel so great afterwards, have like all the inspiration and know the next steps I need to take. But if I didn't take notes while I was doing it, my mind gets wiped and I won't remember their guidance 15 minutes later or the next morning. I'll feel it. I'll feel good. I'll feel better. I'll feel like I had gotten the guidance, the information I've needed, but I can't remember. Do you take notes when you do your own sessions for yourself?
Yes. So that is so funny because I always tell people, like, So when I do for myself, when I do for anyone, I have Akashic Records journal. I always tell people I'm a pen and paper kind of gal.
Yeah.
Sometimes if I'm on the fly, I have a voice app that's called Otter, Otter, and it transcribes messages. So if I'm driving and I just feel inspiration or something, a message coming
Yes.
to me, I'll say it into my little app. But typically I'm a pen and paper kind of gal and I have to write everything down. And whenever I do sessions for people, they'll come back, a year later and be like, Anna Grace, you told me X, Y, and Z was going to happen. And it was so crazy because this is what happened. And da da da. Or like, some job situation would come available or whatever. And I'm like, I literally don't remember. I always tell people it's like a dream. It feels so
Yeah.
real when you're in it. But then afterwards, you're like, it slips away and you're like, I can't remember. But I think it goes back to that same thing of like, we just don't want to inundate our brains with constant
Yeah.
information all the time. So I feel like it kind of comes to us in a flash, but it's so cool when you write it all down and then you go back and read your journal and you're like, I wrote this down. Wow, that is really impressive. I'm amazing.
I'm a great writer. I
I,
can't even believe it. And
yeah,
it's like, well, like you wrote it, but also like your higher self and a bunch of other people probably stepped in and wrote that for you. But
totally.
but you're a great scribe.
It's a great scribe. Totally. I always try to tell people that. And like, whenever I post things online, I always try to give as much credit to the Akashic Records because people are like, wow, how did you come up with that? Or how did you think of that? I'm like, honestly, I really can't take credit. I
Yeah.
just am the translator. I wrote it down and I'm just going to push it out to the masses. But it comes through, and you receive the guidance. And the fun part about writing it down and going back and reading, like, weeks later, you get that feeling of guidance and that good feeling all over again when you reread it because it's almost like you've forgotten.
Now, you might not remember some of the questions that clients have come to you with, but have there been any just like great questions people have come and asked to you and the Akashic Records where you're like, ooh, like that's a good one. I should remember to ask that.
Oh, well, let's see. That's a great question because I'm like, yes. Now that I've done so many readings, it's kind of funny because I feel like I can't remember anything.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
but I would say everyone's are a bit specific to them. Like they'll be like, why, what am I supposed to learn from my relationship with, my mother? Or what am I supposed to learn from
Mm,
my relationship to this person? And I always think those are
yeah.
really good ones because it really brings people's awareness into every single person that you have a difficult relationship. They're not out to get you. They're just here to teach you something. And so we do a lot of those types of relationship questions. But I also love questions that are like, what's holding me back from experiencing love? Or what's holding me back
Mm,
from, and actually really like allowing themselves to be honest with like, what am I doing right now that's maybe holding myself back from a big dream or something that's really exciting? Because I think that's something that gets a little sneaky and you feel like you can't see
yes.
it. And those are always really interesting because sometimes we'll go to a past life. Sometimes we'll go to your 8-year-old self. Sometimes it's just a habit that you've got to break, that you're, putting way too much pressure on yourself and you've just stopped allowing yourself to have fun. You stopped dancing to the music. You just got really serious. And I feel like the Akashic Records always brings everybody back to this place of like, you're here to have fun. This is all a game. Life is a game and you make the rules. I always channel that. Like you make the rules. This is your playing field. This is your game. You chose this human body. You chose this face, this beautiful face. Like you picked you. You wanted to
Yeah.
experience what it was like to be Whitney, to be Anna Grace. And like have so much fun because it's
Yes.
short and it's fleeting and it's so physical. Like there's times when if you think about like being in the spirit realm, like everything is just so um consistently loving and like all like I don't know what the word is, orby, and but like being human is so magical too. Like there are so many spirits that are just waiting to come in and experience a human body, and we're just really here to really experience joy. That's really how I
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah. This is such a good reminder that like we really need to get outside and play. I
Mm,
think it's really easy for us to get stuck behind our devices, stuck behind our motivations and our wanting to grow in our careers and like doing all the things that we need to do at a desk or inside to move things along. And we don't put enough emphasis on playtime outside and physically feeling and experiencing life.
Yes, no, 100%. Like that is my absolute, I think one of my biggest takeaways. I recently, actually, last season of my podcast it was the first time in my life I'd ever been diagnosed with an autoimmune um, disorder or whatever you want to call them. And I don't want to even claim it because I
Yeah.
holistically cleared it, but
Yeah.
it was such a few months where I was like, okay, I've really got to slow the heck down and learn how to slow down and actually know what to do, because we have gotten so good at going, busy, 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 move the needle, go forward, that when we have sometimes time to play or slow down, we don't even know how anymore. We don't know what
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
Because I always tell people, like, going out and drinking, if drinking's your thing, I'm not shaming people, but that can't be the only way that we feel play or connection, or, there has to be something else that we enjoy doing that just really makes us feel alive. And because that was another thing. I mean, I wasn't drinking and doing all of the health things to take care of myself. And it made me really realize, like, wow, now that I have created time to heal and to slow down, I don't even know what the heck to do.
Yeah.
Like, how does one just really slow down and enjoy? And that really got me back to doing so many things that I'm like, okay, away from my devices. That's not a bar. That's not a thing. Like, actually, what is fun for me and what do I enjoy? I am fortunate. I live near the ocean and the beach, which I know some people listening are like, boo, because they don't. But I really got reconnected with how much I love to collect seashells, and I
Yeah.
love to make things. I'm really artistic and really creative. I love to draw. I got an easel. I started painting and, doing these things on the weekend versus other things that, I was always trying to move the needle and be so busy. And in turn, my business actually grew and became more successful. And I was so mind boggled because I was like, wait a minute, I'm not working. I was still working, but I wasn't working as hard. I used to work on,
Yeah.
Saturdays and Sundays. I was always doing content and filming, and
Hmm.
evenings, and it was just always on. And I realized that the source of my autoimmune was that I was just stressed out. I really was just stressed out. And the moment that I took that stress off the body and just started, enjoying where I was, sure enough, my autoimmune is gone. My blood work came back great. And my business was doing better than ever. And I was like, wait, we are allowed to take a deep breath and things will not crumble beneath us like we think that they will. I think it's a very logical, real thought that people think, oh, if I don't post or I don't show up or I don't send that email or if I take a break, I'll be forgotten or behind. And it's just not true
Hmm.
because it's all
Yeah.
your vibration.
So interesting. And so when you say it's all your vibration, what is the vibration when did you shift how you were feeling in being comfortable taking the full weekend off, that you started to notice things did really well in your business? What was the feeling?
Yeah. Well, so because this happened in the last like 6 months. So it was like January when I was realizing, okay, if my body is really elevated, there's an autoimmune flare up happening, something's not right, something's not happy. And I started in the morning getting up and just going on walks in the morning without my phone. That was a big thing. I was like, I'm not even going to listen to, like, sometimes I would do a walking meditation or whatever. I was like,
Yeah.
no phone, no, like, I don't want, because the phone for me, my whole life is on the phone for most people. If the phone itself felt stressful, like I needed to check an email or check something, I was like, no phone. I'm just going to walk around in nature for 15 minutes, right? First thing in the morning.
Yeah.
And so on those walks, I was like, this will be my time in the morning that I'm going to connect with my intuition, connect with myself, and just like see what I actually need. And that was when I really started looking and observing at everything. And I was going, okay, obviously I'm very low energy. And I even looked at the symptoms of, technically I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And I was like, all of those symptoms is your body trying to slow down your metabolism, trying to slow down your thyroid. It's underproducing. So if everything in my body is trying to slow me down right now, symptom wise, then I need to slow the F down. Okay.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
had that like kind of mental light bulb that was like, okay, let's look at the symptoms. And this goes for anybody listening. Whatever symptom that you have, just really study it, whether you're tired or you got digestive issues or whatever. I always tell people, just look at the symptom and listen to it and try to figure out what it's trying to tell you, because it's
Yeah.
only data. It's not scary. It's just information. And, you know, I could have taken that diagnosis and there was a lot of, you know, scary information around it, but I just knew. I was like, no, just going to listen to my body for a month or so. I'm not going to get on medication right away. I'm just going to sit and listen before I do anything. And that was when I started going on those walks. And that was when I realized, wait a minute, I don't have to do all of the things that everyone needs me to do all the time. I know that I want to, you know, be a good business person and a good leader and a good person and a good partner and all these things, but at what cost? You know, am I happy? Am I healthy right now? Obviously my body is upset. So I really just it was like a slow, I would say over like a whole month, like each week I would be like, okay, let's do a realistic day. And I would give myself 3 things that day, 3 things that needed to get done or accomplished that were like the big things. And that was like it. I was like, these 3 things have to get done because, and everybody listening is probably like, oh, well, I have more than 3 things to do. But yeah, you think you do until you create these monster to-do lists with so much stuff on them and you never can get them done in one day anyways. Yeah. So let's just break it down, bite-sized pieces. I was just like baby tiny steps. And that's when I started looking. Yeah, I just started looking back and going like, a lot of this stuff that I'm doing isn't necessary. And that was another thing for, I think, a lot of women especially, is like looking at all the things that you think that you have to do and then realizing like, wait, some of these things I'm actually don't have to do. And I'm actually just doing because I'm like trying to be a martyr or something right now. Like it's not as dire or urgent. I was falling victim to a false sense of urgency, you know, and I think that's a really
beautiful. Yeah.
An illusion that a lot of people get caught up in. There's this false sense of urgency. Like, what am I racing towards right now? Like, yes, of course, we all need to pay our bills and everything, but everything right now is okay. I'm taken care of and I'm not in a race. You know, I think sometimes you have to look around and be like, why are we racing? We have our whole life. That's kind of the fun part, you know? It's like, think about when, you know, people who plan a wedding and then they say once the wedding's over, you get the post-wedding blues or whatever because you're not planning it anymore. I'm getting married soon, so that's my recent analogy. But it's like, that's kind of the fun part, is like planning a vacation and daydreaming and seeing how good it's going to be and just like getting kind of lost in the romantic side of life again. It really brings us back into allowing feminine energy to connect with us. Because sometimes like I get so in my masculine. We all have that masculine and feminine balance, no matter how you identify or show up in the world. It's there. And we want to just be able to communicate with both energies and just check in and see how it feels. And so, yeah, for me, it just started feeling like I just realized how much stuff that I was doing that was unnecessary and how much better I was sleeping at night and how much more I was like, oh, I can breathe when I'm away from my phone. I started deleting Instagram off my phone after 6 p.m. So I wouldn't even, because it was such a habit to just go there, click, reach, check, update. And I was like, no, you can look in the morning. You don't need to check it all night long. You know, there's just a lot of automated behaviors that anybody listening could just do a daily inventory, a daily sweep of like, what are these things that heighten me? And why am I constantly reaching for them? Because in some ways we're almost addicted to it. We can't, you know, we have to know what's going on or we have to be moving and shaking. And I'm just here to tell you, you don't. You're allowed to take a beat. You're allowed to take a breath. You're allowed to go on a walk without your phone. It'll all be there when you get back.
It will. Did you use the Akashic Records to help you get guidance on clearing your autoimmune or just moving through that time of your health?
Yeah, I did. It was interesting because once I first got the diagnosis, my blood work was really bad and I was very heightened. So it took me about 10 days from diagnosis to going into the Akashic Records. Because I always tell people, you want to go into the Akashic Records neutral, meaning I needed to know I could go into the Akashic Records and hear, yep, this could be a terrible disease that you have for the rest of your life, or you could cure this in 2 days. And I needed to be okay with both answers, you know?
Yeah.
It's the only way you can get good information is from a place of neutrality. So it took me about 10 to maybe 2 weeks to go, okay, I'm going to be okay with whatever happens. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to make the best of it. I'm here to teach people. I will spin this. If I have this, you know, I'll be okay. And it took me, because at first I was just so shocked. It was so out of the blue. I was like, I feel like I'm so healthy. And, you know, the doctor's telling me all these scary things, like you might not be able to have children and I'm getting married soon. And I'm just like, it was just very like upsetting. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, well, talk to my fiance about everything. Got myself to a place of neutrality and was like, I'm just going to be okay with everything at any outcome, because that's the best place to operate from. From there, I started receiving guidance that this is actually really interesting and why I love the Akashic Records, obviously. So my doctor was telling me I really should take some medication that is for thyroid medication, but once you start taking it, you have to take it for the rest of your life. And I was like, okay, well, that feels like a really big decision to make, to take something every day for the rest of your life. And I'm only 30 years old. That's a long time. That's expensive. Like, wow. And then she's like, well, you have to if you ever want to have children. And then I find out my sister's on the medication. I didn't even know she had thyroid issues. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm just like, my mind was blown over this whole thing. I'm like, okay, hold up. I'm like, this does not feel right to me. I'm going to think about it and I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to really just see what my other options are first. And so I go into the Akashic Records and I'm like, what's going on with my thyroid? How can I support my thyroid? And I just kept going back to my liver, your liver, your liver, your liver. Every question would take me right back to my liver. And I'm like, and at the time I didn't know much about the liver, which now I know it's kind of like our filtration system. It's obviously very important. And I also learned that the liver is related to stress in Chinese medicine and also anger. There's a lot that can be stored in the liver.
So much anger. Yeah.
Yeah. So once I got that messaging, the Akashic Records were like, don't worry about your thyroid. It's okay. But your liver is what needs attention. And we're just trying to get your attention. And I did receive guidance that I was like, I wasn't showing any of the like really crazy symptoms that some people, like hair loss can happen pretty severely for people. And I wasn't experiencing that. So they were like, you're okay. Your symptoms are very mild, but we're here to, this is just an awareness that you need to know, but really you need to tune into your liver. And I was so thankful that I got that information, because the one side effect with medication was that could have been very hard or damaging on the liver. And so I went back to my doctor and I said, I'm telling you, I need my liver to be checked out. I don't know what panels you can run or liver enzymes. And she pretty much was like, no, your liver's fine. And I was like, I can't tell you why, but I'm just feeling really strongly that something's going on. And fortunately, I had a friend who had two parents who are functional medicine doctors, and she's also a fellow medium as well. So her parents were familiar with the work. And so I went to them and I said, I can't explain it, but the Akashic Records just told me the liver needs to be checked out. And sure enough, there was an issue in my liver. So I did a liver detox, was able to clear it all out, didn't have to get on the medication. And obviously I did several other, energy. I got into somatic work. I got Reiki certified. All of that kind of came from this information around supporting my liver. Was like, how can I detox not only the physical liver, but also the stress and the anger that's been stored there? And I knew nothing about the liver. Like, it was so random when I was channeling it. I was like, the liver? I don't even drink alcohol. I should have a great liver, But no, it's like such a multifaceted organ. There's so much going on.
Yeah.
And so that was a perfect example of how the Akashic Records supported me and, helped me make a decision that obviously I'm really fortunate I'm not on medication for the rest of my life. I've completely reversed my autoimmune diagnosis and, I feel better than ever. I learned a lot.
I love this. I love this. Thank you so much for sharing all this.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to use it. Not just for like guidance in life or relationships, but for our health as well and our bodies, so we can better experience, life. So thank you for sharing.
You're so welcome. I'm so happy.
Okay, so how can people work with you, get a reading with you, learn how to do it themselves, and listen to your podcast? Can you share all the places? I'll have it in the show notes as well for everyone listening.
Absolutely. Thank you. So my podcast is called AG University, Anna Grace, my initials, but everyone calls me AG. Professor AG. Our mascot is the dancing unicorns, and we operate like a true university. So it's a really fun podcast, and I have courses that are continually evolving and coming out. I have a How to Read the Akashic Records course that always lives in my bio, which is at Anna Grace Newell or at AG University Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. And I'm currently so I have a reading wait list that you can join right now on my newsletter. We're operating on a wait list for a bit, but I'm also opening up to start doing live in-person events. So I have 2 big retreats coming up that are going to be like amazing. We do all types of healing circles and energy work and intuition and access the Akashic Records and group readings and all kinds of really fun stuff. And it's also just a really cool community. So if you guys ever want to catch up with me at an event, everything goes out in my newsletter and my Instagram pages. And yeah, I think just basically for all things, my newsletter is a good spot to find all the information as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It's such a treat to get to see you again. And this was really great info. I look forward to doing an Akashic record reading soon.
Yes.
Putting all my questions together.
Yes. Yes, please do. Oh, it was so good to see you. And thank you for having me.
My pleasure.